Dear students, the resume and cover letter assignment covers prospective employment communication and intercultural communication, specifically globalization and outsourcing. Your task is to look for an international job posting, and the websites in which you can find this information does appear in your textbook. So you want to make sure that you read thoroughly the intercultural communication chapter. As you are probably aware, many companies have a global perspective, which means that they conduct business not only in the United States but then also abroad. And so it's very important for workers to understand intercultural communication and cultural differences so that that worker can communicate effectively not only within his or her own culture but in other cultures as well. I'm sure you have read the difference between high context culture and low context culture, so that really is kind of the basis for communication, and then it really does expand from that perspective of high context and low context cultures. For the resume and cover letter, again, you're finding a position that is overseas in another country, and you are going to make sure that you tailor that position, or tailor your resume and cover letter for that position. You want to look for a position in which at this present time you have the qualifications and or experience, so you would be the ideal candidate for that position. In the cover letter, you want to make sure that you describe your cultural knowledge of that country. And you want to make sure that your cultural knowledge is relevant as far as business is concerned. So you want to make sure that as you describe the culture of that particular country, that you keep in mind why your description of that country is important in a business perspective. Your goal here is to let that prospective employer know that you are aware of the culture. So not only are you aware of that particular company, but you are also aware of the culture. You're going to explain how you, again, have the skills, the qualifications, the personality even to be able to function in that country. When I say relevant business information, that means you don't want to, put in the letter that the population of, let's say, Bermuda, the ideal location overseas. Although I guess really Bermuda is not overseas. It's not part of the Caribbean, but it's not quite overseas either. But anyway, nonetheless, the population in Bermuda is 500,000. Well, that really isn't related to business. So you want to make sure that you keep it in terms of business communication and business styles and that type of information. So once again, the letter should consist of the culture of the company and examples of how you put a particular skill that's needed for that particular position, how you put those skills to use. Your letter can be I guess you could say it can be you can begin with an attention getter. You don't have to, but many times beginning with an attention getter will kind of raise you above everyone else who is applying for the position. So something to think about. For the resume, this is an example of a resume, and I have it posted in the learning module. And there are various styles that you can use when it comes to a resume. Your book highlights a skills resume and a chronological resume. You can use either resume. It's up to you, because really when it comes to a style, to a skills or a chronological resume, it all depends on what your qualifications are and your education. So it's totally up to you. However, I do ask that you use the skills resume or the chronological resume appropriately. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say about that, because you should have read a chapter, so you should know the difference between the two. You want to be very careful as far as the format is concerned for your resume. Again, there are various formats that you can use, but be careful. In other words, you want to make sure that you have a pretty good mix of list and also of paragraphs. And I think this example gives you a pretty good balance between the two. Remember that a resume is probably the only business document in which sentence fragments are required. So you use sentence fragments and you punctuate the sentence fragment. I'm sorry, the fragment, not the sentence fragment, but the fragment. You punctuate the fragment as a sentence. So once again, you do not write complete sentences in a resume, you write fragments. This resume does a pretty good job of quantifying, and I would encourage you, when you can, to quantify. So quantify means that you have a percentage or a number. So here we have 20% and 500,000 and 32%. So that really does make your accomplishment stand out. Of course, for your resume and cover letter, it has to be truthful, 100%. So these are legal documents, so you want to make sure that you are truthful. Your resume and cover letter really are just the beginning documents in your employment package. The next documents that you will write will be documents that are written after the interview. So you always want to make sure that you follow up with a thank you letter. It doesn't matter whether you want the job or not. If you don't want the job, you still want to make sure that you send that thank you letter, because it's just professional, and you never know, you may need to go back and apply for another position with that company. So you don't want to burn any bridges, as the saying goes. So you want to make sure that you're professional from the beginning to the end. Make sure that you take note of the protocol and the etiquette when it comes to interviews as well. So again, look through the book. Remember to dress for success. Remember to have extra copies of your resume. Remember to have your references with you when you enter the interview. Make sure that you prepare for the various types of interviews that you may have. So you may have a stress interview or a behavioral interview or situational interview. So just be aware that the interview is a test, and you want to make sure that you pass the test so that you can get that position. Remember to use very good eye contact, consistent eye contact. It is okay to take notes, so make sure you have a pen and pencil so that you can take notes. Just remember, however, to listen and to maintain that eye contact as well, even though you're taking notes. I would like to see the posting for the position for this assignment, so you can just download for me the job description. You can just put that as an attachment. Ideally, I would like only one file, so I would like the resume and cover letter in the same file. If you can put that posting in the same file, that would be great, so I don't have to open and close and all of that various documents. Remember that your resume and cover letter are indeed a package, an employment package. So you want to make sure that you format them the same. So for example, here this is Linda's logo or header, which appears on her resume. it's good for you to include the same formats on your letter as well. Okay, so again, to give that appearance of a package. Have fun putting this resume and cover letter together. This will be good practice for you. As you change careers or as you enter a career, you want to make sure that you write a cover letter and a resume effectively. Of course, you should not have any errors. This really is the opening introduction statement about who you are and the type of writer that you are, so it really does have to be immaculate. So keep that in mind. This is truly a persuasive document, so your job in these two documents is to persuade the reader to say, okay, this person has the qualifications and skills needed. This person will be a good mix for the company, so I'm going to call him or her in for an interview. And so you want to make sure that the resume and cover letter really do provide the perfect impression of you. Have fun putting it together. And this is the first step in your employment success.